I know it's already enough that I reviewed so many episodes from good cartoons, but just like the first Cartoon Crisis 3 years ago, I'm gonna be reviewing a bad episode from a bad cartoon, so that I can actually have some kind of variety in this. My original plan's that I wasn't going to review any bad episodes from bad cartoons, but at the same time, since this is the appropriate time, I'm gonna be talking about Fanboy and Chum. Yeah, Fanboy and Chum is honestly one of the worst cartoons I have ever sit through. Mainly the fact that the CGI is ugly, even if it may be unique from other people, and the fact that the characters are so annoying and very unbearable to sit through. And the world setting in Fanboy and Chum is honestly one of the worst and most uncomfortable places for me to actually enjoy. So what episode I'm going to be reviewing? Well, for about a minute of this recording, you probably know that I'm going to be reviewing Night Morning. Now, you're probably expecting me to review one of the worst episodes from this, but let's be real. There are not a lot of good episodes from this show, from fans, and the majority of the episodes from this is honestly stupid, over the top, and downright ridiculous. This episode is a prime example. For me, Night Morning is just one of those episodes that make you think, so we have this episode, but Cartoon Network has Adventure Time. I already know full well that this is the biggest, stupidest mistakes that Nickelodeon has made, even if this was 13 years ago when they made a choice of having the rights of Adventure Time, but then they scrapped it so Cartoon Network has Adventure Time, and they had to go with this. When I completely think of that, this episode instantly comes into mind. It starts off with Fanboy and Chum sleeping for the night. But then Fanboy notices that Chum isn't sleeping in his bed. And it's revealed that Chum was actually out during the night. Fanboy actually is curious on what Chum was doing this whole time, and it's his daily routine of Night Morning. And I have to be a bit fair here. People who usually do this type of stuff is usually their own thing when they experiencing the outside life or the stuff that they enjoy the most. I will admit that people usually do this kind of gimmick in order to actually have some kind of activities going on for themselves. But the difference is that in the real world, it's actually suitable. But here, Chum's night morning routine isn't really that special because, let's just say that for how generic this show is, this episode is instantly generic, and it really goes to show that Nickelodeon should have gotten the rights of Adventure Time. I honestly think that the fact that Chum isn't really that smart, even though that he's a child, it still doesn't excuse the fact that what he's doing in this episode just really goes to show that he's only thinking of himself and no one else. It really goes to show that they're really outcasts compared to the other citizens in the city that they live in. Not only that, we get probably a 30-second or longer of Fanboy completely talking to Chum of what he's been doing during his night mornings. And no, this isn't an era. This show is just too desperate and over the top for comedy that the reflection over the meal is just basically having two people looking at Chum on what night morning is. That, in my opinion, is not only forced comedy, but also awful comedy at best. And believe me, I honestly think that what Fanboy is just trying to get to know Chum about his night morning routine, it really makes this one time of this episode really mostly filler. And considering the fact that SpongeBob is well known for filler by the time this show was airing, that really says a lot about Nicktoons during the end of the 2000s and the early 2010s. And when Chum is offering to have Fanboy completely join on his night morning routine, he completely invites the other citizens from town or city and completely buy him a night morning. And the reason why he's doing that is because he can get paid from them. Yeah. The issue I have with this is that that every single character is completely stupid. Okay, granted, not every other character is stupid, but at the same time, it really makes the show have no kind of identity, and it's really hard for me to actually find some kind of enjoyment out of it. If there's one thing that this episode does right, is the fact that there is no fart or toilet jokes or anything whatsoever in this episode. This show is infamous on having so many toilet jokes and fart jokes that they can't be able to think of original jokes like Adventure Time did when they premiered their episodes at Cartoon Network. Seriously, they picked this over Adventure Time. No matter how long this show, along with Adventure Time, is, how old they are, this would easily scar the fanboys of Nick and Cartoon Network on thinking that this was actually a good decision from Nickelodeon. So anyway, what is Chum Chum's night morning routine? Well, he just basically does what he does mostly during the nighttime, like eating cereal and just completely acting really juvenile questions or juvenile answers or something like that. I get that he's a child, but it doesn't excuse anything in this episode, because Fanboy is just glorifying everything that what Chum Chum does. He completely announced that Chum Chum is about to get his favorite cereal, and everyone behind him just completely found it really, really amazing to watch. That pause was really intentional, because I can really tell that this is one of the moments that people just cannot stand this show, because it just isn't extraordinary or unique. It may be unique when it comes to a few points, but stuff like this can easily overshadow everything. Believe me when I say this, is that this is the type of stuff that is mostly the stuff that you've seen from Fred the movie. And if I'm ever going to review that, I will probably have the same points of the points that I made from this to that. That's how terrible these scenes are, by having these characters being this stupid while having Chum Chum just doing the stuff that are not extraordinary. They're just ordinary what he does during his night morning routine. And the fact that people are still siding with him is just... Especially that Chum Chum, all he ever does is just eat his cereal, which didn't even phase... It didn't even finch the other characters whatsoever, or completely make them excited for what he's doing. Seriously. No matter how the characters are disinterested in this, it doesn't make this episode entertaining whatsoever. It just makes Fanboy really unlikable and way more of a stupid joke on just trying to get money, only to actually glorify any of this in order to make this work. And the episode just gets a lot worse while the characters just watch TV, but it's off. And Chum Chum just uses his imagination. Yeah. Chum Chum just uses his imagination while the TV is off. This is like the criticism of what Nickelodeon says to... This is like the answer to Nickelodeon's criticism to the people on what the Lights Out episode of Fairly Odd Parents was. Believe me, that really sums it up. I don't care if this episode came out before Lights Out, because everything that Nickelodeon had done at the end of the 2000s and still in the 2010s and in this decade, I honestly think that they really don't even care about anything other than just making a quick buck. And they could have made more money if they couldn't get Adventure Time over this. Because as far as I'm concerned, if any other network that isn't as popular as Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network or Disney Channel, they will probably pick this. And as far as I'm concerned, it will probably last for one season. Yeah, sometimes I just don't understand how bad cartoons have good fan bases. This show is honestly really difficult for me to actually see some kind of likability from some audiences. And the episode just keeps going on and on and on having Fanboy just completely announcing everything and what Chum Chum does, while the other characters are just disinterested. Seriously, how is this considered entertainment? It's actually boring. And then when we get to the bit of Chum Chum saying something about Knight Arca, he completely said that he basically is a superhero that completely releases gifts from all over the world, which is like Santa Claus, and Chum Chum doesn't even know what Santa Claus is. Another pause intentional. I absolutely think that this episode, for the sole purpose, is just trying to be an episode, but unlike in SpongeBob, it has filler moments. This episode has filler, but it's mainly filler for all the unexciting reasons. Do you really think that this is the type of stuff that is considered entertainment, and the fact that these characters deserve some kind of attention on Nickelodeon? No, I don't. Night Morning is honestly one of the most dullest, but it's dullest for one of the most awful reasons. Seriously. I know I'm taking this episode to heart, but that's basically how the show is treating its characters. So if there's no other likable character in this, then I honestly think that I cannot relate to anything. So why should I waste my time watching these characters doing this kind of stuff if they act this way? And the fact that we completely see Knight Arca appealing because he likes milk and cookies, but not cookies and milk. It's honestly cheap. It's lazy cartoon ideals that makes an episode weak and very awful for me to sit through. Even in the ending, well, Knight Arca completely takes Chum Chum to all over the place with Fanboy completely sleeping. It makes this ending really worthless, and it doesn't even excuse the fact that I think that for the majority of this episode, they had this idea on having Night Morning, but they can't think of a way to end it off with Fanboy and Chum Chum giving the invited guests something exciting to watch. So they had to cram in this Night Arca gimmick. Now, granted, the people who completely left didn't see Night Arca and it was too late, but if this was the only thing that Chum Chum can do during night morning, then at this point, I honestly think that having an episode dedicated to Night Arca would have been a lot more better than what we've seen from the majority of this episode. At this point, this episode instantly broke me of how the show is just basically desperate for attention, despite the fact that it comes nowhere near as good as Adventure Time. And while Adventure Time did lead to great cartoons coming like Steven Universe, We Bear Bears, Amazing World of Gumball, and Regular Show, Fanboy and Chum Chum just give us more bad cartoons that can really make Nickelodeon the worst when it comes to comparing it to Disney Channel and Cartoon Network. And believe me, Nickelodeon honestly is one of the worst companies I've ever seen. Even with the good shows that they had in the past, these are the decisions that really cross the line. Because at this point, they are completely creative control over everything. While Cartoon Network doesn't give creative control. I mean, sure, they do make most of the cartoons from their own studios, and they do publish other cartoons from other companies, but at the same time, Nickelodeon just completely takes over everything and doesn't even think this through. Seriously, if I was one of the people running Nickelodeon Studios, I would instantly take my time on either picking this or Adventure Time. And even though that I'm not a fan of Adventure Time like I used to. If you saw the Red Throne review, I can still tell that it was a much more better show than anything that what Fanboy and Chum Chum has ever done. And that is really saying a lot to the fact that these characters are just annoying and very unlikable. I honestly think that there's not even any potential in this show for how it's portrayed. It's honestly difficult for me to actually see any kind of likability if this entire show is full of craziness and hyperactive, but it just ends up being annoying, cringeworthy, and full of nothingness. Seriously. If any of you still like this show, you cannot deny that this show is really hated by almost everyone who's been completely signed with Nick throughout these years. As far as I'm concerned, this is the type of show that really breaks Nickelodeon and the cartoons that they represented. Sure, there were bad cartoons that came up before Fanboy and Chum Chum, like Tiger the Power Juju, but this episode easily takes the cake of how it really makes everything Nickelodeon and the decision making way more questionable and way more painful and difficult for me to actually find any kind of enjoyment out of. So, hopefully, just like Johnny Test, maybe, this is the only time I'm ever going to talk about Fanboy and Chum Chum, and thank the Lord, it better be. I give this episode a 1.5 out of 10. We're nearly at the end of Cartoon Crisis 2. I really hope that the final videos I have uploaded for this week would actually be worth the wait.